Good evening, everybody. We still have a couple of minutes before we start. I would like to announce that Xuan is organizing a yoga retreat in Antaiji in 2 weeks or so. I think it starts on April 2nd until the 6th. And it seems that there are still a few open spaces. So if anybody's interested, maybe Xuan can give us links also later. Maybe Xuan at the end of the class could explain a little bit about it. It would be a chance to, if you are in Japan in early April, it would be a chance to get to know Antaiji, because there's regular retreats in May, July, and one open session. But May and July is already booked. So this April yoga retreat would be a good opportunity to get to know Antaiji. But again, only if you are in Japan at that time. So maybe later or now, there's already in the chat function. Xuan put some links. Maybe later when I upload this to YouTube, I can also put the links into the video description if anybody is watching this later on YouTube. Also in German, tomorrow at 6 a.m. in Germany, I will upload a video about the retreat, and I'm using some of the footage that Xuan shot in 2023, 2 years ago. I used parts of her video from her video channel. I hope that's okay. So today I will talk again about the precious mirror Samadhi and the hexagrams and the 5 ranks. And again, it's going to be a little bit complicated. But before that, let's forget about all that difficult stuff and just sit together in silence for 30 minutes. So, thank you for joining. Let me get back to the precious mirror Samadhi text. Let me share the text with you. Let me see. I hope you can see that. Let me start with a portion that I talked about 2 weeks ago, where the text talks about the hexagrams. In the hexagram, double fire, that's the one that I painted here. It has 2 trigrams which both mean fire. In the hexagram double fire, when main and subsidiary lines are transposed, probably main is the connected one and subsidiary is the broken line. When they are transposed, piled up, they become 3. The permutations make 5. Like the taste of the 5-flavored herb, like the 5-pronged vajra. Maybe about the 5-flavored herb and the 5-pronged vajra I can share Wikipedia. So the 5-flavored herb in English or in Latin is called Schisandra chinensis, or the fruit is called Magnolia berry, 5-flavor fruit, and in Chinese probably you pronounce it something like Wu Wei Ji. It's an herb that's supposed to have 5 different flavors, namely sweet and sour, salty, spicy and bitter. And whenever I explain that, there's somebody says, but spicy isn't a flavor, which of course is true, but I think you get the idea. There's a herb and it has 5 different flavors. And this is the vajra. There are bells like this in Japan too. This is also from Wikipedia. So if you want to learn more about that, you can have a look at the Wikipedia article later. So basically 5 aspects of the same truth. And as a metaphor, this herb is used and the vajra is used. And last time I explained that I don't really understand why it's these 5 hexagrams. Bolata says that it's those 5 that you see on the screen right now. For example, this would be double fire, but why, for example, is this not used? This would be double water. This also looks nice to me, but this is not used, this is used. This is rank 5. This would be rank 4. But for example, this also looks nice. This would also look nice, but they are not used. Last time, 2 weeks ago, I talked about that a lot. Basically, for me, there's no really good explanation why the double fire is chosen for rank 5 and why the other 4 are chosen. And today I want to share a funny episode that you can also find in the book by Ross Bolata about Hakuin. As you probably know, in Japan there are 2 Zen schools. I'm from the Soto school, and the most famous name in Soto would be Dogen, who he brought Soto Zen from China to Japan 800 years ago. The other school is Rinzai, and the most important name there is probably Hakuin. Hakuin lived about 350 years ago in Japan. And he basically organized all of the koans. He, how would you say, revitalized Rinzai Zen 350 years ago. And this story that I want to relate to you or read to you from Bolotter's books is basically about Hakuin when he was still a training monk. And he has had kind of maybe the same doubts about this passage that I had. And he asked his teacher about it. His teacher's name is Shoju. Let me read it. Shoju was transmitting the secrets of the 5 ranks to Hakuin. So the 5 ranks once more would be these 5, the absolute in the relative in the absolute, coming out of the absolute, arriving in the relative, and then arriving in harmony. Hakuin's teacher was explaining these 5s, and he was using the text that we are studying right now. He was using, obviously, the Precious Mirror Samadhi. When he reached the passage in the Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi, in the 6 lines of the doubled Li hexagram, essential and contingent mutually correspond. So the 2 lines mutually correspond. Ranked in pairs, they yield 3. Shoju abruptly stopped. So the teacher stopped here. Hakuin begged Shoju to continue, to impart to him the secret of transformed, they make 5. You can't expect to get it all in just one visit, Shoju replied. Take a look at Dongshan's verses on the 5 ranks. Don't read anything else. These verses I referred to in the past a couple of times. We will have a look at them maybe today, maybe again in 2 weeks. Take a look at the Dongshan's verses on the 5 ranks. Don't read anything else. Pay no attention to the comments or theories others have made about them. For if you do, you'll find yourself down inside the same old hole as the other polecats. Hakuin asked a favor of his fellow student, Sokaku, saying, Shoju is advanced in years. It may not be possible for me to see him again. Brother Kaku, I'd like you to get him to teach you the secret of the phrase, transformed they make 5, from the Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi, so that you can pass it on to me. Sokaku agreed, and the 2 men set out on their separate ways. Just as he had promised, Sokaku arrived from Shoju-an during the lecture meeting. So he went to his teacher and heard the lecture. Hakuin asked him for the secret of the transformed passage from the song. It's not easy, said Sokaku. Sokaku, said the master. So the master here refers to Hakuin, who wants to know the meaning. Sokaku, said the master, would it make it any easier if we enlisted the aid of some liquid wisdom, which is a secret word for sake, Japanese wine. They call it liquid wisdom in Zen temples. So would it help you if I make you drink some wine and then maybe you can explain to me? The master's fellow monks went and tracked down a flask of sake. Sokaku's cup was filled, but as he raised it to his lips, the master caught his hands. Have your drink, After you give me the secret, he said. So first you explain, and then I let you drink. No, Sokaku said. Let go of my hand. After you drink all that sake, explained the master, you won't be in any shape to explain it to me. Unable to come up with any reason to refuse, Sokaku finally began to explain the passage. He had done no more than utter the words, transformed they make 5. When the master suddenly realized its meaning, stop! I've got it now. I understand it, he cried. So Hakuin understood even before his senior could explain it to him. The others were indignant. Don't stop him, they said. We don't understand it yet. You can learn it from me, replied the master, Hakuin. Sokaku by then finished off several cups of sake, and they all had a good laugh. The following day, when the master found time to be alone with Sokaku, he set forth for him the understanding he had grasped. Not a word he spoke was inconsistent with the teaching Shoju had entrusted to Sokaku. So obviously there was a time when Hakuin also had his doubts about the meaning of this passage. And the doubts were solved by drinking a cup of wine, obviously. In Rinzai, then maybe in the Doksan room, the master would then ask the students, so what was it that Hakuin would later say to Sokaku, and what was his understanding? Give me your answer. So I leave that question to you, to find your own question, to find your own answer to that. Today I want to proceed a little bit further. So after this comes rank 4. Wondrously embraced within the complete, drumming and singing begin together. Well, there's different possible translations of this, but basically there's the drumming and the singing, two completely different elements of a piece of music, kind of the rhythm section and then the more melodious part. But they work together, they correspond. Wondrously embraced within the complete, drumming and singing begin together. Penetrate the source and travel the pathways. Embrace the territory and treasure the roads. You would do well to respect this. Do not neglect it. And to be honest, I'm not quite sure where rank 4 ends and where rank 5 starts, but I have the feeling up to here is rank 4 and what follows would be rank 5. And when Hakuin had his doubts, his teacher Shoju told him you should read the verses by Dongshan, and he was referring to these, the Gata of the 5 positions of ruler and minister. I've been reading from these before. Let me start with number 3. That's what I talked about 4 weeks ago. The name of the emperor must not be pronounced. Or in the precious mirror Samadhi, there's talk about a baby. Baba baba. It makes sounds, but the sounds don't really express it. You can't really pronounce it. You can't really speak of the truth When you try it, you're like a baby. Let me read that once more. That would be number 3. Coming out of the absolute. And something that's a little bit strange here is that Bolleter translates this as arriving within the essential. Essential is Bolleter's translation for the absolute. And number 4, he translates as approaching from the contingent. But the character, those would be the Chinese characters. This one here means to come. And this one, number 4, means to arrive. So it would be more literal to say arriving in the contingent and coming out of. Coming out of the essential, arriving in the contingent. And it also makes more sense from the movement. First, you need to come out of something to arrive somewhere else. It's kind of strange to first say arriving within and later saying approaching from. And I think Bolleter is the only one who uses this kind of translation. So the movement, in the case of Bolleter, is kind of the opposite. You approach from the contingent and you arrive in the essential. But usually it's the other way around. You start from the absolute. You start from emptiness and you approach form. And of course, some people might say here, but isn't it more the way that Bolleter says? Like usually what I call the game, we're caught in the game, we're caught in delusion. That's where we need to start. But from there we approach emptiness and finally we arrive in emptiness in the absolute. But that would be only true if we talk about the process towards enlightenment. But these 5 ranks are all aspects of enlightenment. And from the Zen perspective, the realization of emptiness comes first, but after that, it's kind of like leaving the mountain again, coming down from the mountain and returning to the marketplace, as it's called in the 10 ox herding pictures. So stage 3, the rank 3, would be kind of like the 8th picture in the ox herding pictures. Complete emptiness, an empty circle. But then rank number 4 would be like the 10th, returning to the marketplace. You arrive in the relative world again. So I'm a little bit surprised here, but by Bolleter's choice of arriving within and approaching from the contingent. Most translators agree that it's the opposite. You come out of the essential and you arrive in the contingent. Be that as it may, let me read it. In nothingness, there's a road apart from the dust. If you don't break the taboo on mentioning the emperor's name, you will surpass the eloquence of the previous dynasty's worthies who cut off tongues. In nothingness, there's a road apart from the dust. Basically, it's returning to the here and now. It's realizing the Dharma of thusness, but there is no name for Dharma of thusness. And then rank 4, which I would like to talk about today. Approaching from, or I would rather prefer to say arriving in the contingents. No need to dodge when blades are crossed. In the song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi, that would be kind of like the rhythm section and the melodious section of the music. The world of contradictions, differences. Blossoms may be white or red, the leaves, the fresh leaves of the trees are green. The world of differences. There's no need to dodge the relative world of differences. There's no need to dodge duality. There's no need to avoid duality. There's nothing wrong with the dual world. That's how I read this. No need to dodge when blades are crossed. The skillful one is like a lotus in the midst of fire. That's a metaphor that's often used, for example, for the Buddha living as a human being in this world, or for the Bodhisattva returning from the mountain to the marketplace. So this rank here would be very close to the last of the ox herding pictures. The lotus blooming in the fire, the Bodhisattva returning to the world. Seemingly, you yourself possess the aspiration to soar to the heavens. Again, that's the hermit that's returning to the marketplace. Bollitter himself is making a kind of comparison between the 5 ranks and the ox herding cycle. And well, what you need to be aware of here, he's actually distinguishing 2 cycles. The one is of essential and contingent that I've been talking about all the time. There's actually another cycle with 5 steps. It's also contributed to Dongshan, but it's a little bit different in that it's a step-by-step progression, and I will talk about that in a couple of weeks. So the second cycle is called Cycle of Merit, and there number 3 corresponds to seeing the ox. You see emptiness. And number 4 would be catching the ox, taming the ox, riding the ox home, and then entering the marketplace. So basically returning to the relative world. And then the last one would be transcending the ox and self, and returning to the source. Be that as it may, how are we in time? Oh, it's time to stop for me talking now. Basically, these lines here are rank 4, and I think rank 4 is about returning to the world as a bodhisattva after you understood emptiness. And understanding emptiness is also the realization that there's no suffering, because there's nobody who suffers. If you understand egolessness, you understand even if there's pain, there's nobody in pain. And that is also the realization there's nobody who needs to be freed from suffering. We are already in nirvana. The moment I realize egolessness is my liberation, and this is the liberation of all living beings. There's nobody who needs to be saved. But this would be rank 3. The point here is we shouldn't stop there. If you hear somebody cry for help, you don't say, oh, that's only emptiness. There's nobody there crying. It's just a sound. It's like a baby, ba 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 ba. If you hear somebody cry for help, you return to the muddy world as a bodhisattva. So that's rank 4. You return to the dual world. You don't stop in non-duality. You don't stop in emptiness. You proceed to the dual world where there are people who suffer. There are people who need your help. Okay, so much from my side for today. If you have questions or things that you would like to share, please do so. Also, if you have questions about the yoga retreat in Antaiji, things you would like to ask Xuan-san, now would be an opportunity to do that as well. Joe is raising his hand, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. I really enjoy this discussion of this text. I think just particularly this week, I was struck by something that I think my dad said many weeks ago about, we have these very intellectual discussions about it, but there's something about just sort of the poetry of the images, like the drumming and singing begin in wondrous silence, the clashed swords, the lotus in the fire, and that really gets across this idea of the bodhisattva in the world. But this thinking about like that power of images, this text as like an artistic thing as opposed to purely intellectual, and the mention of singing and drumming in this particular verse, and this discussion of how students in the past struggled to understand it, but perhaps liquid wisdom helped them to do so. It gave me this thought about the title of the text is Song of the Precious Mirror Samadhi. So I was wondering, like, how would, perhaps in Dongshan's time or immediately afterwards, would this have been actually like sung or chanted, and that was a way of understanding it? Or was it more like this kind of intellectual discussion, comparing it with other texts that we're doing? Are we perhaps missing something by just reading it in translation like this? Does that make sense as a question or comment? I hope it does. It felt a bit rambly as I tried to just say it out loud now.
Yeah, it's an interesting idea that, for example, in Japan, you would chant it as a sutra, but most monks who chant these sutra don't really think about the meaning. Many of them have never actually thought about what they are reciting there. They just chant it. And another idea would be, if it's called a song, maybe people actually sung it. Maybe they had a cup of wine and after that they sung it. So as with music, it's not really so much about the meaning of what you sing there. I think that's the point of the story with Hakuin and his senior monks. At one point, they completely forgot about what could be the meaning of the words. So yes, I mean, probably you all know that discussion, especially in the West, like when in Western Zen centers, sutras are recited. Well, first there's the discussion, should we do it in Japanese or maybe in Chinese, or do we do it in English, in our own language? Some people say, well, I would rather have it in my language so I understand the meaning. Others say, out of respect for the tradition, we do it in the original language. And of course, neither Japanese nor Chinese are really the original language of Buddhism. Then we would have to do it all in Pali or in Sanskrit, whatever. And there are two answers. For one thing, there's no need to do it in Japanese or in Chinese, because, well, the Chinese translated the text from Sanskrit into their language. So we can, of course, do it and translate it into English and into German, whatever language you want. But also, what you maybe hinted at right now is true. When you translate it and you try to understand it, actually you miss the point. The point being more like a song. And you don't have to translate a Beatles song into your own language to kind of get the feeling of the song. It's not so much about the words. Of course, there's something in the words as well. So at one point, it's also worth thinking about, well, what are we actually singing there? And maybe there's various possible interpretations, and sometimes it's worth thinking about those different possibilities. But it's also very easy to get lost in that. And I think the story of Hakuin drinking wine with his senior is kind of when Hakuin got lost, the wine sort of brought him back. Although often when we drink alcohol, the opposite happens, that the alcohol takes us away out of the here and now. But in the case of Hakuin, it helped him to get back.
Interesting. Thank you.
Thank you. Gleb is raising his hand. Please, Gleb.
Yes. Hello, everyone. Sorry to keep you waiting while we are out of time already. But very quick question. Are monks really allowed to drink liquid wisdom? Isn't it prohibited by the Noble Eightfold Path?
Yeah, and it's also prohibited by the precepts. I think it was precept number 5. You shouldn't drink alcohol or any intoxicating substances. So it's prohibited.
How
But
do they
Hakuin
drink
did
it?
it. But
How do they drink it then?
obviously it's possible to do things that are prohibited.
Wow. Okay.
I don't say it's okay, but that happens. That happens.
Thank you.
And it can even sometimes help to, how do you say, go beyond dualities. Because you must do this, you must not do that, is also duality. And what I said today is, after we experience emptiness, it's also worth returning to this dual world. There's nothing wrong with dualities. But the dual world is only one half of the truth. We also need to get beyond that. And sometimes even a cup of wine can get you beyond the duality. What you say is completely right. The Buddha said you must not drink wine. But Hakuin drank wine and had a realization, obviously. And I'm not saying that it's okay to drink wine. I don't say it's okay to drink wine. But not to drink wine is only one half of the truth.
Thank you.
Thank you. Tanya, please.
Yeah, I may also add that today I have a cold and I feel quite busy, like dizzy in the head and also tired from working, and so I don't need any wine.
Yeah, but last September we shared a bottle of vodka.
Yeah.
Maybe you remember. You remember.
Yeah, I quite enjoyed this rule breaking stuff. It's good. But you don't need a wine. A cold also has the same effects as you listen to the text.
Yes.
When you read the text, and I just can't understand it intellectually, as my mind is like dizzy. But it's so nice just listening and not to know anything about the text, and then the text feels like this feeling of the Beatles song.
Yes.
So I don't need the understanding, but what we do in the discussion, you try to understand intellectually what the words are meaning, but the other way, just read it and read it again and read it again is also it's also worth. And so I just enjoyed this. Thank you.
Yeah, what you said is true, of course. Having a cold can bring you there. Often in koans we have these stories, somebody hits his toe on a rock and it hurts. He's in pain. Wah! Or he wants to go home at night and the teacher gives him a candle. Here, it's dark outside. Take the candle. And the moment he takes it, the teacher blows the candle out. Those are moments where you kind of return to this spot where there's no question. The question is answered. And a cold, even a simple cold, can solve the question sometimes.
Yeah. Yeah, I love this. Okay, thank you.
Anything else? Any other questions? Anything you would like to share? Xuan, do you want to say something about the retreat? Maybe what you're going to do about the schedule?
Yeah, on April 6th, from April 2nd to April 6th, we're going to do a yoga and Zen retreat. So our schedule is a little different than Antaiji normal Zazen retreat. We're going to do yoga from 5 to 7 every morning, and then little break. After break, we're going to do pranayama, breathing practice, and then zazen for 1 hour. After that, we're going to have a breakfast, and then we'll do something in the temple with other monks. Afternoon, we're going to do dinner around 5 to 6, and then after that we have a yoga stretching class, and then meditation. So basically morning and night yoga and zazen.
Great.
Yeah.
So you still have some openings. So if people are interested, they can contact you. I think you put a link in the chat, and I will put a link later in the video description. Okay, great. Yeah. Anything else you would like to ask or share?
I was gonna say, I train with a group here in the UK that actually do sing it, and I have like is like the literal music notation that we use.
Oh, great!
And our translation is called "The Most Excellent Mirror Samadhi," but
I see.
We sing it as part of like morning service, so like before doing the Heart Sutra chanting.
Interesting. I never saw a version with notes.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, everything that we sing is sung in English with, strangely, with Gregorian style. Like
is it kind of the Shasta Abbey tradition?
Yeah.
I see. Yeah. I think there's some Gregorian influence there. Yeah. Interesting. Thank you. So next week I return to Sawaki's quotes to you, and then in 2 weeks, will we do it? You're back from Antaiji, I think, in 2 weeks? Or is it before you go to Antaiji? I think, well, in 2 weeks, probably we will have this meeting again, and I will talk about the precious Mirror Samadhi song. Probably rank 5 next time. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a good time. Have a nice week. Hope to see you again. And thank you to Xuan and Chris for hosting us. Or Chris says it's Xuan who's hosting you. I'm not hosting you. Thank you anyway. See you. Bye.